Welcome back to the channel, everyone. So today I was really looking at some things, looking at the landscape of the NFL in the news outlets. And really we find ourselves in kind of this lull period where there's not a lot to talk about. And the first peeps of NFL training camp, July 19th. So we look at this, we're basically a week away from the first peeps of rookies reporting to training camp and the first peeps of news out of NFL training camp. And one thing I want to talk about and say that we're going to get through this. We just got to hold on. We're going to get through this. And introducing this series, I think this is something that can get us there. Now, I'm going to be funneling through each division. There's 8 divisions in the NFL with 32 teams. And I want to talk about each team in each division and my biggest question mark for each team. So today we got the NFC North, and it's only fitting. Chicago Bears, Detroit Lions. Hopefully no one fights by the end of this video. We know how those two fan bases get. But I want to talk about them in depth and some of my questions for them. Now, I want to start this off with the Green Bay Packers, a very, very talented team. And I think the Vikings, the Bears, the Lions, they all want to see this team fall off a cliff. And I can understand why. For the past century, the Green Bay Packers have been blessed at the quarterback position. They've had guys who can absolutely sling the football, transitioning out of Brett Favre, transitioning into Aaron Rodgers. So we see Jordan Love, a very young, talented guy. Now, understanding right now, he hasn't played a lot of football. But with this team, he's not my biggest question. I look at some of the weapons. They did a lot to surround him with some good weapons and really make him feel comfortable in that scheme in his first year. Pretty solid offensive line. But I want to get straight into my point for this team, and that's the defense. It's not even a player. It's Joe Barry and what will be the breaking point. All my true Green Bay Packers fans know Joe Barry has been something that we've been dealing with for years, something that's been frustrating us for years because it's that traditional old classic quarters, bend but don't break. Having that, and you got the corners and we have the linebackers, defensive line, and we have all this talent. All of these schemes do this. They get a bunch of talent, and I think about Jonathan Gannon when this pops to my mind, but you just don't use it effectively. And when I talked in my video about breaking down the NFC North, I said, this is a very talented defense. I mean, you have star players, should I say, at all 3 levels. Devondre Campbell, Quay Walker, young, talented. We look at Jair Alexander, Rasul Douglas, Darnell Savage, all of these players, but we haven't put it together. We haven't had that top 5 defense. There is no way that you can tell me with all of the talent, Lucas Van Ness just got drafted, but with all of the talent, you should not be a top 10 to 5 defense year in and year out, but you have not been that. You've been a mediocre defense, and I think that with Joe Barry, it's only a matter of time. Now, there were some good defensive coordinators on the market in this offseason period. They choose not to take that route. They're going into yet another season with Joe Barry, and that's my biggest question is, can he propel this defense to be elite? I love all of the talent. I don't really see any true weaknesses here. I love Slayton, Devontae Wyatt, Kenny Clark, Preston Smith. So even with Rashawn Gary coming back, I think that this is the season they have to be elite. You got Jordan Love, so having that younger quarterback, it's going to be a team that wants to lean on their defense, that doesn't want to give up a huge time of possession to the opponent. So I'm keeping my eye on that, and that's something I want to see in training camp. How is that offense hitting? Now, understand, we can't really fully tell if they'll be an elite defense because joint practices tell us some of that, but when they're practicing against each other, that's not really a true tell for me at least. So Jordan Love is a guy I'm watching, but it's all on the defense. Now, getting into the Minnesota Vikings, a team that I haven't talked about as much on this channel, but a team that I like as well. And I think for me, it goes back to the defense. Now, Kirk Cousins, I just want to say this for a disclaimer. He's a very good quarterback. Understanding that I lost a lot of hope and pride with Kirk Cousins last season because I went to bat for him even when everybody told me no, don't do it. I mean, at the Eagles game, the Cowboys game where they lost 40-3, all of the games where I said, even the Giants game, I went to bat for Kirk Cousins and I said he's got it. Because I think of that Buffalo Bills game, a game I watched live, and Justin Jefferson with that one-handed catch. I was jumping out of my bed watching that game. But now, I think he's a good quarterback. I don't know how far he can take them. You know, the media has pushed a narrative that he's not this guy. And understand, in prime time, he doesn't perform to his best all the time. But overall, statistically, having Justin Jefferson, bringing in Jordan Addison, Adam Thielen out the door, I think this will be another good team. And another team, go into the defense. I talk about question marks, and it lies on this team for me with the defense because I love Brian Flores. Coming from Miami, came to my Pittsburgh Steelers as our linebackers coach, and now he's back in the chair as the defensive coordinator. So from a play calling standpoint and from what they want to do, from the overall scheme and philosophy of the team, that's not really the question. But do they have the talent to do it? I want to know what you Minnesota Vikings fans think in the comments, because I look at everything. I look at the defense last year, and I've done film breakdowns on this defense, and I say that they were poor last year, and it was a lot of broken assignments, busted coverages, missed tackles, everything you can name about a defense. It happened for the Minnesota Vikings, and I look at what they did in their process. Now, understand, some guys were cap casualties: Dalvin Cook, Patrick Peterson. I look at Eric Kendricks, all of the guys who, you know, we had to cut ties with. Harrison Smith still hanging on to this team, but I didn't see a team that did a lot to really add to what they lost, because I look at the linebacker core. I see Brian Asamoah. I see Jordan Hicks. I mean, some pretty solid players in their own right. But by any means, I don't see a team that got better than what they had last year. And I think about their draft and some of the things they did. Overall, we have to like the process, but I just don't see a team who's really going after it defensively, because Marcus Davenport, coming from the New Orleans Saints, I like him. Andrew Booth Jr. getting better. Mekhi Blackman, a guy who you drafted, really liked him out of college. I mean, Brian Murphy, brought him over for Arizona. There are some solid things in which you tried to do, but I just don't know right now. I really don't. And even with Zadarius Smith, you know, letting go of him going to the Cleveland Browns. So now it's just going to be a prove year for me. And I think now this is where I can kind of ease your mind about this defense, because you got the right guy. If it was any lack of talent, you have an influx of coaching. With Brian Flores and what he's going to bring to this team, he's going to bring swagger, he's going to bring play calling, he's going to bring nastiness. So I talk about how we have some weaknesses to my perspective in some of these spots. But when we talk about Brian Flores, I think he's a guy who could bridge the gap until we get some more guys in the draft via trade or via free agency. But that's my biggest question for right now. Do they have enough talent across these spots? I still like Danielle Hunter. Like I said, Marcus Davenport coming over, pretty solid. But in that secondary, didn't see real significant moves out of this team. And I think now, maybe with the new defensive coordinator, he's not going to ask them to do as much, because we know Brian Flores, man coverage. He's blitzing man coverage. And I think that would be easier, especially for a young secondary. So something I want to see in a shift in a scheme and a shift in a mindset, maybe we can make up for some of this. Maybe the previous Vikings defensive coordinator was asking a little too much and didn't really preview the message how he should have to this defense. So that led in the lack of communication there. Now, last two teams I want to talk about: Chicago Bears, Detroit Lions. And I think, talking about the Chicago Bears, there's some places I could go with this, and I've talked in depth about the Bears a lot, but I'm going to just keep it with Justin Fields, because I look at the offensive line, and that's what I was thinking about as I was preparing for this video. And I say, you know, they brought in Darnell Wright. They brought in Nate Davis. They kicked back Tevin Jenkins to guard. And theoretically, in the process, these have all been sweet moves. They've done everything they're supposed to do to help Justin Fields. But at the end of the day, we don't know yet. And I think with the quarterback, that's a bigger question for me, because can he take that huge leap? How many times have I said, I got to say it again. I can't go without saying it. For Josh Allen, it was Stephon Diggs. For Jalen Hurts, it was A.J. Brown. For Justin Fields, will it be DJ Moore in this offensive line? And I think that's something I have to ask, something I have to talk about. It's really my question. The only question I have left. I've done film breakdowns on Justin Fields. I've talked about the offense, everything. But that's still one of my questions, and I want to know what you guys think In the process, DJ Moore got the Chase Claypool trade. Everything they've done, and that's what I'm still stuck at. Everything they've done is right. So we want to see it from Justin Fields now. Something I'm going to be watching in training camp. Want to see a bump in completion percentage. Want to see less runs, more passes, especially in third and long, second and long situations. Just being more comfortable, working on some of those mechanics, some of the laws in his game. I think he has all the work ethic to do so. I think he has all the talent to do so. But that's still one of my questions, something I'm keeping my eye on. Now, Detroit Lions, plain and simple. And I think we've all talked about this. Shout out to all the subscribers who I've had this conversation with. I can't really single anyone out because we've all had the conversation. And I think part of me wants to take it to linebacker, but a part of me really wants to go to that defensive line. And that's our edge rusher too. We know Aiden Hudson. We're expecting him to take yet another leap, especially with how he's worked on himself and his mental, how he's approached this offseason. I think he's approaching the offseason like a guy who didn't do anything in his rookie year. He's approaching the offseason like a 10-year vet, and I love to see that. So I think from a process, from a skill standpoint, from the work ethic, he's going to do everything he can to get better. Now, beyond that, beside him, I've talked about James Houston, a.k.a. The Problem. Talked about John Kaminsky, talked about Josh Pascal, Romeo Okwara, Julian Okwara, and I just had this conversation about Josh Pascal, talking about who can be that edge too. And Brad Holmes, I'm never counting Brad Holmes out. Now, I'm not going to sit here and make a bunch of trade rumors as far as to saying he's going to go out and get a guy if we're seeing in training camp. I just want a little more off that edge. That may be something he visits. Never counting him out, but I think that we look at the guys in this room, and I just want to know. It's one of my questions. And like I said, this is the video we have for a reason, because I want you guys to let me know in the comments as well. Is it James Houston? If I had to bet, I think it's James Houston. But I don't know, and this is what I've said so many times, if he will be the guy on every down. Or is he still going to be that pass rush specialist in the nickel and dime packages? And I think, Romeo Okwara, he has to be my second bet because I've seen it. I've seen Romeo Okwara play very good football. And I think with injuries, with things that have happened over the span of the years, he has gotten away from that, but I think it's still in there somewhere. And if anything, it's going to have to be him, because I look at John Kaminsky, I view him as more of the do-it-all kind of defensive end. Talk about 4-eye, 3-tech, those types of things. Don't see him as truly an edge rusher, but he can be a stunt guy coming down on the inside. So, like I said, I have to go with Romeo. I got to go with James Houston, Josh Pascal, another guy to throw in there. It's really interesting, but it's still one of my questions because I can't answer it just yet. Everything in me wants to say James Houston, but we have to look at the guys in this room and we have to respect them. And I think that one of these guys will pop, one of these guys will shine. Now, those are my questions for this division. The biggest question I have for each team, and to recap through this, Joe Barry, Green Bay Packers. Time is ticking and you're on my clock. So I need to see if you're going to galvanize this defense and get everybody in the room to buy into what you're doing and get that top 10-5 defense. Have all the players to do so. Minnesota Vikings. Brian Flores is the guy. I have no question that he is the guy. But do we have the talent to do that, especially in a secondary where I don't think you made any significant moves? Now, I did like the moves you made. I'm not here to say I didn't. Byron Murphy, Mekhi Blackman, I do like those moves. But is that enough? We look at the linebackers. I like the edge rushers. I like the defensive line. But is it overall enough to compete in this division to get back to the playoffs? 11+ wins. That's something I have my eyes on. Chicago Bears, Justin Fields, one step away. We're all looking at it. And I think that he has everything in him to do it. Just said that. So I believe in Fields, rooting for the guy. And with the Detroit Lions, just talked about it. Edge rusher 2. Who's that guy for this team? That's something I have my eyes on. So what are your biggest questions for these teams like I talked about? And some of the fans, I know you look at different positions, but this is just how I view football and how I view my team building. And that's why I'm brought to these questions. I know my questions are different from somebody else's and a lot of people's actually, but this is what I have. And that's why we have the comments to talk about it. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe if you enjoy the content. We're coming out with more. We're going through the rest of these divisions. Got 7 of them to knock down. So get ready for the ride. Training camp is here. We're going to be covering every single team we can get to. Have a huge announcement coming out in my next video, so you guys going to want to be there for that one. Thank you for watching as always. And now, we out.